Good evening and welcome to the Nation at 9. Over the past weeks, we've been having a political discourse that is getting punny. From Gabbar Singh tax to Torpedo 1 and Torpedo 2 to India is like the Titanic and the iceberg is talking. All of that comes to a culmination of hard fact, which is what the finance minister today has said, and hisab, which is what the Prime Minister has said over the past few days. What are the hard facts and the hisab? It is something momentous that has taken place in terms of the perception of where India is going. Let's bring it up on your screens, because in the past 2 hours, the World Bank has published its Ease of Doing Business Index. India has jumped 30 positions, 30 rankings from 130 a year ago to 100. That's our ranking in the top 100 countries. Remember, when we began in 2012, we were slipping. Slight improvement, big jump. And in some of the parameters that go into making up the sum total of this ranking, the jump has been even bigger. Perhaps some ways to go, but in those parameters, the jump has been even bigger. Those will come up on your screens that will tell you the story of where India stands. Have a look. When it comes to resolving insolvencies, bankruptcies, from 136 to 103, a jump of 30 positions. In the top 5, when it comes to protecting minority investors, big relief over there. When it comes to paying taxes without really incorporating the full benefits of GST, there is a huge jump of 50 positions, 50 rankings. When it comes to getting credit in the top 30 countries in the world, which means access when you want to borrow some funds if you're a business. All of these now, as we take them onto your screens, tell a story that incremental structural reform done over a period of time, how painstaking it can be, but what the dividends must be now, as we show these graphics full frame on your screens, will tell you the story. It has to benefit the Aam Aadmi. It has to benefit the people of this country. It has to translate into jobs. So the conversation is not completely over. It must continue. But for a government that has now promised that in the next 2 years of the time it has in power before it goes and faces the electorate again, it will be giving hisab. Those 2 years will be about that hisab. It has begun in a large measure tonight. When we examine now, it's nice to bring you, as all of us Indians, some good news. It might not all be perfect, but if it is getting better, there is hope. We have talked in this country about our century. We've talked in this country about overtaking China. We've talked about demographic dividend. The reality is, unless it percolates into something, it could be perhaps the biggest economic disaster in the world. For 3 years, Narendra Modi has been talking from macro to micro, from petty things to making forms from 5 pages to 1 page, to opening digital document lockers, all the petty things which culminated in him going to the Americas in Washington and claiming that 7,000 reforms had been done by the government. But there has been a slippage in the economy. There's no denying that. Demonetization, the economic dividends of that, well, the judgment on that is still out. GST, everybody agrees it's a great idea. There has been a debate on implementation. In the end, it matters for all of us. Our jobs, our lives are all linked to this country. The opposition, of course, hopes the government fails. But in that, let them not hope that India fails as well. The good news has come from the World Bank. It is significant. It's not a token increment that India has worked its way out of, as happened in the first 2 years of the Modi government, a 30-place jump in the ease of doing business. This means that businessmen, not only in India, but all over the world, that are going to go through the World Bank rankings, come the morning papers tomorrow, they'll get a chance to look at India at a new light. Will this lead to jobs, investment, and to the capitalization of that demographic dividend? That remains the debate. How it fits into the political narrative that is currently going on as elections take place in 2 states in less than a week's time, that is the second part of that debate. We have it. Here's what happened.
सन 2014 में हम लोग 142 पे थे। उसके बाद पिछले 2 वर्षों में 131 और 130 पे हम लोग आए हैं। और ये कोई जनरलाइज्ड रैंकिंग नहीं होती कि आपने क्या क्या कार्रवाई की अपने देश में बिजनेस एनवायरनमेंट को इंप्रूव करने की। ये कुछ स्पेसिफिक क्षेत्रों में होती है और उसकी बहुत ही कठिन मापदंड लेते हैं वो। और इस साल की जो रैंकिंग दी गई है उसमें पिछले वर्ष की 130 नंबर रैंकिंग से हम लोग 30 स्थान आगे आकर 100 नंबर पर आए हैं। जहां हम बहुत नीचे थे, 136 थे दुनिया में इन रिजॉल्विंग इंसॉल्वेंसी। और क्योंकि आईबीसी इंसॉल्वेंसी और बैंकरप्सी कोड लागू हो गया, इंप्लीमेंट हो गया, उस पर कार्रवाई शुरू हो गई, इसमें भी हम लोग 33 पोजीशंस जंप किए हैं 103 पे। ये पॉजिटिव एरियाज हैं। पिछले वर्ष तक 189 कंट्रीज में हम लोग 172 पे थे। यानी टैक्स देना ये एकदम बहुत ही कम्बरसम व्यवस्था थी और हम काफी नीचे थे दुनिया में। दिस ईयर वी हैव मूव्ड अप 53 प्लेसेस। जो भी सारा ऑनलाइन सिस्टम बना है, टैक्सेस जमा कराने का, रिटर्न्स फाइल करने का, असेसमेंट्स का, तो हम 172 से 119 पे आ गए हैं। We have moved up 53 places.
The biggest discrepancy I see, and again I mentioned it there, is you're the people creating the jobs, but you're not the people getting the financial support. So that one thing absolutely has to be corrected.
विदेश में रह रहे भारतीय भी बहुत बड़ी मात्रा में धन भारत भेज रहे हैं। अलग अलग देशों की रैंकिंग करने वाली एजेंसियां और संस्थाएं चकित है। मेक इन इंडिया एक ऐसा ब्रांड बना है जिससे पूरी दुनिया अचंभित हो गई है।
हमारी पोजीशन है कि ये जो जीएसटी बनी है ये ओवर कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है। ये जो 5-6 टैक्स के स्लैब्स बनाए हैं इसमें कमियां हैं, और जो 28% का टैक्स है वो 18% पर कैप होना चाहिए। दुख की बात है कि अब जीएसटी लागू हो गई।
इतने ही तरह के हिडन टैक्स अब खत्म हो चुके हैं। उपभोक्ता को अब सामने रिसिप्ट पर दिखता है कि उसने कितना टैक्स राज्य सरकार को दिया, कितना टैक्स केंद्र सरकार को दिया, और लॉन्ग टर्म में जीएसटी का सबसे बड़ा फायदा कंज्यूमर्स को ही होने वाला है।
We've seen India improve across the board in doing business, and I should say that this is not just things which have been done in the last year, but things which have been done in the last 2 to 3 years, because the survey is picking up the firm level experience. So it relies not just on the changes to the legal code, but also the implementation of new business processes which make it easier. For example, online systems of registering and applying for permits, and also seeking feedback from users to make continuous improvements.
And what is the India's position in South Asia?
Well, India is actually, in the world, is actually now, this year, one of the top 10 improvers across the world, and it's this year has had the most improvement It's the highest amount of improvement this year across the region and across the world. So India has itself jumped 30 places in its ranking compared to other countries, from 130 to 100, but is in the top 10 most improved countries in the world as well.
And ma'am, which indicator has contributed most in this ranking?
Well, I think actually it's improved across the board. There's a number of reforms which have been picked up and which have reduced the time to start a business. There's been improvements in the operation of the insolvency and bankruptcy code, and which we continue to see coming through in the next few years. Construction permits have become easier to obtain, and many other such areas.
What was the
There you heard it from the finance minister, you heard it from the two political opponents in this case, and you heard it there from the World Bank. Let's open up this conversation. Narendra Taneja of the BJP joining us on the broadcast, Charan Singh Sapra representing the Congress. I have Professor Aman Agarwal, an economist in our studios, as is Gautam Mukherjee, who's staying on with us. Professor Madhav Nalappat, the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, joins us on the broadcast as well. Charan Singh Sapra ji, ab Gabbar, Torpedo, Titanic, ab kya bolenge ab?
See, the issue is, we don't deny whatever report you are now talking about, the World Bank report. So the issue is what Shri Rahul Gandhi is talking about. He's talking about the situation at the ground level, the situation today. See, the GDP of the country has been going down since 6 quarters. The manufacturing industry has been going down since 20 quarters. The export industry has been going down since last 15 quarters. The foreign policy investors, foreign portfolio investors, they have withdrawn the investment to the tune of $3.2 billion. So this is the ground level situation. The small transaction business, which amounts to 73% to 75% of Indian economy, that has taken a bad hit. So Shri Rahul Gandhi is referring to the ground level situation that today, due to GST, due to the bad implementation of GST, or probably due to the bad implementation or the bad idea of demonetization, the small traders and the general public.
Come on, Charan Singh Sapra, today, sir,
in the country.
The reality is the finance minister is quoted a host of statistics.
There is a rise in unemployment.
This is perhaps as impartial as it gets in the world. This is not a government agency that is funding or sponsoring this statistic. This is a world report that is combed over by every financial consultancy in the world, by every bank in the world. As an Indian, aren't you thrilled, Charan Singh Sapra?
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
We are there, at least a measure of the way there.
See what I am saying, that report will be studied carefully.
What's
That's
to study?
On one side, but we are talking about the ground situation.
No, you want to study about the ground situation. You want to go through the report and find the one thing that India hasn't improved in, Charan Singh Sapra.
You tell me.
Let me complete. I can quote the same statistics to you.
Please let me complete.
You're trying to quote to me. Charan Singh Sapra, the reality is, as an Indian, forget as a politician,
let me complete. You are
not allowing me to complete. That India fails just so that Modi fails?
No. See, nobody wants India to fail. We are more patriotic than what Modi or BJP is. We want India definitely to go ahead. But the fact of the situation is that at the ground level, there are more unemployment cases. The prices of essential commodities are on rise. People are not having any work over here.
Inflation
People are running
is the lowest
from cities
since it
to
was
villages and searching for Manrega. This is also the factual situation in the country.
Problem,
so you cannot deny all this. Can you deny that there is not a rise in unemployment?
I find it appalling, Charan Singh Sapra, please, not today. I find it appalling that you make neither any explanations for making a mockery, as your party has done, of the Indian economy and its reform process. But when good news comes from across our shores,
done by Narendra Modi.
You're not interested in listening to it.
The mockery is being done by Narendra Modi and his government, not by the Congress party.
He's not talking about Titanic and icebergs and Torpedo 1 and Torpedo 2 and
Why are the people on the streets? Why the people were on the streets in Surat? Why the people were on streets in Ahmedabad? Everybody has seen that.
People are outraged in this country. So the World Bank, unfortunately, is not a political party.
People are outraged in the country.
You're seeing the outrage, and the people will soon get a chance to vote to express their outrage if indeed they feel it. Is it Narendra Taneja? Now, it is one thing for Charan Singh Sapra, of course, to take a political position, but in the end, it is the opposition's duty to do its job. Its job is to remind you not to sit on your laurels. Its job is to remind you that there are problems in the implementation of GST, that demonetization perhaps wasn't the biggest deal. Given the fact that you've had this huge thumbs up from the World Bank, sir, how do you now translate it into things that really matter for Indians? It's their salaries, it's their job prospects, it's creating those startups, creating employment, because those haven't gotten that tsunami effect that we would be hoping they would.
See, the World Bank knows economy better than the Congress spokesperson. This ranking is based on number of indicators and a number of the studies that they have done. I mean, we wouldn't have really received, India wouldn't have received this ranking without the country as a whole performing on all those indicators. If the Congress party, they refuse to believe it, refuse to see it, I mean, it's their choice. One can't fight with them on that. And as far as the important thing is, this is a great news for India. This is a great news for India's economy. This is going to boost India's image even further, which in turn would mean even better and more investment coming to India, in direct investment, also indirect investment. Okay. And at the same time, you see, when India's image, India image goes for improvement overseas, it has its own, effect when it comes to sentiments back at home. But you see, as far as a Congress spokesperson is concerned, I'm very happy if there is any constructive criticism of our policy A, B, C, D, E. They never do that. It's just empty, hollow rhetoric, and it's the same record I've been hearing now for months. So I'm sick of it, and I'm sure your viewers
Rahul Gandhi says,
Mr.
Sabra, let me do the questioning, sir, please.
Second point.
Rahul Gandhi says, look, we have specific problems with GST. We had specific problems with demonetization. They're trying to be specific.
Let me complete fast.
Do you give them room to be specific, sir? Mr. Taneja?
Let me answer. Let me. I very patiently heard Congress spokesperson. I hope he will extend that courtesy to me, that I listen me out. You see, and on GST, everybody knows that all decisions were taken unanimously. Congress was very much a party to it. GST is a joint, is a baby which equally belongs to Congress party. If they want to disown the baby completely today, is their choice. Okay. But the fact is, GST is something the center and the states have basically produced it together. Okay. And if there were any flaws at that time, they should have pointed out. When it comes to the implementation, is being done again, even that work is being done
can be done better,
including by states, by the Congress party.
There's been problems with the website, on basic issues,
but if you want to play petty politics on it,
I completely accept that problems will occur, and there's no such thing as completely smooth in this culture of India which needs to be broken. But I just hold on to that thought. Charan Singh Sapra, I see you. I'm going to come back to you. Let me get our other guests into the conversation. Gautam Mukherjee, on the premise of it, on the whole scale picture, without suggesting that, oh wow, everything's fixed now, let's lock up the keys and go home. Without getting into that, the very fact that this has happened, it is as credible, as impartial a report as can possibly get. It's not come from a government agency, it's come from abroad. It is examined by independent parties, banks and financial institutions will all examine this and fact check it as much as they can. How crucial is this actually?
It's very, very encouraging. There is no two ways about it. Having said that, it is also very timely. We're going into a series of assembly elections where the impression is sought to be created by the opposition that the government has somehow failed in its promises, failed in its objectives, has slowed down, gone into stagnation. But the point is when you get
politically possible to go around wave World Bank reports? I mean, how do people understand of that?
When you've had a 30-point jump,
yeah,
I mean
that sinks. So
that is undeniable.
30 point badayam. That do you think that's
30-point jump, and the finance minister in the press conference where he's talking about the 30-point jump is saying we're aiming at 50
and
in the
within
world
2 years.
ranking.
Yeah, they say within 2 years. Yeah.
Now, 2018, and there are other economic parameters which are now emerging in terms of IIP and other areas like that, which are also perking up.
Yeah.
Now, What is wrong with this is not, to pick on demonetization and GST and make a fuss about it, because they are structural reforms.
Yes.
And they have given some very strong markers, such
Yes.
as digitization in the case of demonetization, and
Yes.
such as a unit tax, which has saved time, money in
No, but okay,
octroi
okay.
and so on.
Yeah, so let me examine, because Narendra Modi has talked, we talk about the headline reforms, we make a big deal about GST, it has a big inauguration and all that, but there have been small petty things, I don't know how many times Narendra Modi has talked about neem-coated urea in his speeches. Okay, like I mentioned, opening online...
But it really has saved a lot of money.
So these
Aadhaar has saved a lot of money.
Aadhaar has knocked off maybe thousands of crores of fake subsidies that were going out. You had the LPG subsidy cut down, which has happened voluntarily.
Yeah.
So it's
electricity, what a bounce.
Yeah, I think in the first, all of us have grown up doing pankha at night, and we are now producing electricity in surplus for the first time. Of course, delivery is still a problem. Let me quickly rope in both Madhav Nalapat, who's joining us on the broadcast, and ask him in this question before I come to Professor Agarwal. Madhav Nalapat, should we be celebrating our Indians today, or will it be premature?
These are reforms that are on the way, and there's no doubt that the Modi government has introduced some very significant reforms. The point is that some of these reforms will take 6-7 years to be fully operational, and there's no doubt that some of the reforms could have been better thought out. For example, GST, and for example, demonetization. I don't agree with Gautam Mukherjee when he says we have to discount these two, because frankly, the way they have been implemented has created a lot of problems for a lot of people. So the difficulty, Rishabh, we are talking politics here. Rahul Gandhi is talking politics, and we are talking politics.
Yes.
And Rahul Gandhi knows that several individuals who have been given an aid first by the World Bank, such as, for example, Chandrababu Naidu, have been given an failure in the election. So this kind of a World Bank ranking has no impact on the election. What counts in the election is, at the ground level, are the reforms working? And the point about many of these reforms, which are important and which will really transform India, they will take time and pain to work out.
Okay.
And during that time, the question is, politically, how will the people react?
Okay.
If they have trust in Prime Minister Modi, they will keep supporting him. If they feel that the opposition is right and there's too much of pain, they will go against it.
Okay, so it's about perception.
To see the reform process.
Okay, it's as much about perception, and perception feeds into economics as well. Professor Aman Agarwal, the basic things. I have to get a passport done. I was expecting to be a day-long hassle. 45 minutes walk in, walk out. 2 days later, passport in my hand. No phone calls required from anyone. It was amazing for this to happen. So the petty things which would have taken forever, and let's face it, perhaps underhanded techniques also to get them done, not required. Now these petty things matter to people. Perception, as Madhav Nalapat is saying, also matters to people. Do World Bank reports matter in that perception at all?
You see, the World Bank looks at various parameters apart from those which you identified, and does take perception-based reviews as well from policy-making people as well as people from the ground level as well. And having worked at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. way back in 2000, 2001, I have seen the way some of these reports and policies are framed at the bank way back almost 20 years
So
back.
enlighten us.
So, given that they're fairly independent of any kind of political influence or social influence, but there are perceptions which make difference. When we look at the GDP, you also mentioned of the GDP going down, but yes, please look at it from the perspective of how the world has been doing all over the world. How is the GDP across the board? Given those conditions, we have still done much better despite the fact demonetization took place. And demonetization has been one of the key factors growth for the going digital way. Otherwise, if you look at masses converting crores, thousands of crores of people to go digital would have been almost impossible.
But now, it is political economy, and before I get the politicians back into this, Gautam Mukherjee, your 2 bits on this, because there is a political economy. The government has to be convinced that this is the way to go down for the last 2 years, or do you now fear that this is either encouraging them to do more, or is it now a little bit step back and get into 2019 election mode?
I think what we can gain out of this, insofar as the electorate is concerned, is momentum.
Okay.
This is an independent World Bank report that has given a thumbs up and said we're in the top 10 in terms of movement. In fact, the country with the biggest single jump in rankings.
Yes.
Now that is nice insofar as it goes.
Yes.
But if we can build momentum into our implementation, which has been a major flaw in the rollout of the Modi government.
Okay. Because the Congress will be the first to say that, and that's to their disadvantage. But the fact is, Modi does sell things well. He sold demonetization
He sells very well, but do his people come through?
So now this is about the salesmanship is good. The ideas are good. The top level thinking is good. It's now about just on the ground implementation is the whole, perhaps, in all of this that actually requires to be solved. And that's a really tough onion to crack for anyone, let alone Narendra Modi and his team. Charan Singh Sapra, here's the reality, sir, that we all hope that India does better. We all hope that we are in a better position 2 years later or 5 years later or 10 years later for the sake of our children, sir. So here's my question to you. The government says come up with specific suggestions. Do you have any specific suggestions, sir, which you think that they can do better? Before I go back to Professor Nalapat.
See, the irony of the situation is that government has never taken specific suggestions from the opposition party. Did the government consult opposition before demonetization? Or did they take anybody into confidence? We have such a great economist, former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. He's never been consulted by Narendra Modi. So I don't think so. Government is serious about asking the opposition party about various measures.
But the people are, so you have to tell the people you have a better model.
We are seeing that they are failing in Skill India, they are failing in Startup India, they have failed in Make in India. There have been NPA accounts to the tune of 8.35 lakh crores. And they have been, waiving off the loans of willful defaulters to the tune of 2 lakh crores.
Come on,
the recapitalization.
The defaulters came from where, Charan Singh Sapra? And the government is trying to recapitalize the banks. It's not a completely honest recapitalization of the banks.
And there is no roadmap and no time frame for this recapitalization.
Okay, so you're saying that if the government was more open to taking suggestions, that you would be welcome to offer them, and perhaps the people would also get a chance to listen to what concrete ideas you have. Narendra Taneja, I will give you the last word, sir. Madhav Nalapat want to quickly come in. Professor Nalapat.
See, I want to say that we have got a very dysfunctional economic system, riddled with corruption and cronyism. Today what's happening is that is slowly changing. In the past, for example, people would buy foreign companies and sell them to public sector units at an inflated cost. They would borrow money from the bank and just spend that money on themselves and get back 10 times the equity money they put in by the loans they took. Now that is slowly, definitely changing. Now the point is, these businessmen are finding it very difficult to operate in the old way. New businessmen can come up if there is less bureaucracy, less regulation, and a much smoother path. Now that second thing is also got to be done. The first thing about transforming the crony corrupt structure is proceeding. The second, of making it easy for the new person to come. For India to have a Google, a Yahoo, or a Microsoft, that's a long way behind. And in my opinion, the big problem of the Modi government, it has not really done administrative reform to the extent that it should. So
okay, administrative reform is a good point. Administrative reform, yes, that's a very good point, because we're talking about implementation mechanisms. There have been some moves. I have not often seen a whole bunch of IAS cadres who was in charge of defense production all retired on the same day for non-performance. So there has been some move. Perhaps there can be more. I'm just giving token examples. Quickly, Professor Agarwal, on the one point of what we need to see next happen. What is the icing on the cake that can be added while we discuss administration?
I think there is still a lot of tune in terms of corruption to be brought under control.
No, but let us specific. Would you like to see Air India divested quickly? Would you like to see the bank money come in or the mergers happening quickly? What would you like to see?
I think the mergers would be a disadvantage to the economy because that will cut down competition, and healthy competition cutting down in SBI has already seen people, the SBI wanting 3,000 as a minimum balance requirement, which even a vendor or a small rickshaw puller cannot actually then hold an account. So that kind of a thing will start happening if we have mergers and acquisitions. The other thing is the recapitalization which has taken place should be for growth orientation of banks and not for setting off loans, which is being debated and talked about, which is actually putting things in the in the ditch instead of making the banks
all right.
more. And it is an important requirement for the Basel III norms, which the RBI has said in March 2016 that we need to have 9% of the capital which is there with the banks, which has got risen because of demonetization.
Now the ball, Narendra Taneja, is back in your court. The opposition has all the luxury in the world to take you to town on every small thing that you do wrong. The responsibility of power is with you, and that's what it is. With great power comes great responsibility. How do you now tackle this great news coming from the world, but how do you ensure that the people on the ground actually feel it? Is it about selling it or making them feel it?
No, it's not about selling. You have to do it, and we are doing work on the ground, and that's basically is the reflection, the recognition by the World Bank. We are the highest improver, highest improver between Egypt and Japan.
Window dressings are not going to work with Indian economy.
An organization like World Bank would not be issuing this.
I know you're doing your job. Let him do it.
Can you ask this man to shut up?
Let's not get in there.
Can you ask this man to shut up?
Substantive point, please. Not this again, please. Substantive point. Mr. Taneja, substantive point, please. Yes.
So don't get excited. I am telling you the
point,
facts.
please.
So is the highest.
Whenever opposition tells you the facts.
Come on, Mr. Sabra, we have to make this every time. So come on, please. Let him make a substantive point. Let me close the debate more.
He's an uncivilized person.
No, but don't get excited, Mr. Taneja. You are cornered today.
So I was saying India is the highest improver in.
Mr. Taneja, please, substantive point. Fix it. Stick to it and fix it.
Highest improver, but
okay, here we go. I'm out of time, gentlemen. This is what the tragedy that happens. And for the people of this country, you need to know actually what's happening in this country. They get lost in the semantics. And that's
let anybody talk. This man is a...
Mr. Sabra, please, sir, I've given you such a fair chance
Why do you call him?
to say what you want to say. Let him finish the point. Let me finish the debate.
Uncivilized gentleman.
Mr. Taneja.
No, tell this man...
Come on, sir, please. Your point, please. Your point, please.
You know, so this is the, this recognition is not given out of the blue. This is not given out of the blue. This is based on the ground work we have done on the ground. And trust me, demonetization plays a very important role in it. After demonetization, the world has more trust.
I'm out of time. I need to slip into a break. The reality is,
we know it destroyed Congress economy. Demonetization destroyed Congress party's economy. But it has improved the economy of the country.
I'm out of time. The reality is, when good news comes our way, and there is no doubting that economics, which is a difficult thing to understand and analyze, a difficult thing to predict, the World Bank makes an effort to try to give people a gauge. A lot of effort has gone into this report. It's as independent as it can possibly get, as Professor Agarwal was telling us. So there is good news. Let's take it as good news without trying to fry the egg before it has actually been hacked. But at the end, let's not sit on our laurels, because the task before us is really, really big. Think of the 600 million people younger than me. Where will they find jobs?